What's up and welcome back to the Razer Blade 18 live unboxing or welcome back to another episode of Gizmo Slip Tech or live stream, whatever you want to call it. I'm super excited because I don't know for sure if this is going to be my laptop for 2023, but I am leaning towards actually picking the Blade 18 as my laptop for 2023. I got it in the mail about 2 days ago. I have been hands-on with it. I have updated a number of things on it. And I have played a few games on it now. I've got it ready to go for us to do some gameplay testing. So today's overview, the goal is to be able to unbox this guy. We're going to take the bottom off. We're going to get into Windows. I'm going to show you the webcam. We're going to do a speaker test. We're going to do a display test. We're going to do a flex test. And then we're going to load into some benchmarks, Cinebench R23, Timespy, and then we're going to undervolt and see if what kind of performance we can get with undervolting on Cinebench. And then we're going to overclock with the RTX 4090 in Timespy and see how far we can push it, at least a basic overclock and a basic undervolt. And I'll also kind of explain how to do it if you decide to do it on this laptop. I'm going to try to include undervolting and overclocking in these unboxing videos going forward if I can. So that said, I did repackage the laptop up to be exactly how it was when I bought it. So I'm gonna try to show you basically how it was, except I did apply the Razer pre-order skin that I got. It's like a multicolor 3M cast skin, so it's very precise skin, very high quality skin. We're gonna take a close look at that. I'm gonna give you my feedback on applying that and my thoughts on the looks, and you'll be able to get a close-up and see what it looks like. So this laptop comes in a external box, and then inside of that box you get this box, and inside of this box there's another box. So it's a triple box setup. No, this is the second of 3 boxes. All right, so here's how it's packaged. You've got your power adapter. I believe this is on the top right here, and then you have a secondary box right here. Voila. All right. Now this secondary box has this bubble wrap on it to help protect in case the box gets punctured or gets dropped. And even though my outside box, I don't really want to show you guys my outside box because it has addresses on it. That box was damaged. The internal 2 boxes were not damaged. So the packaging was good at protecting the laptop. So here is the power adapter. And notice, I'll show you this power adapter side by side with a couple of other competitors. The power cable itself that goes into the power adapter is very short. It's only about 4 feet long, 3.5 feet long. It's not very long. But the cable that goes from the power adapter to the laptop's actually longer than 6 feet. This is probably a little over 6 feet. So that's really good. You can keep this on the floor and then have the cable come up onto your desk or table. So you don't have to have the power adapter up on your desk. I kind of prefer this cable weighting sizing pretty much, but I kind of wish this cable was about a foot longer. That would be a little bit better, I think. All right, so I did take a couple of the stickers off that was on the laptop. The actual stickers here just goes over what's in the GPU. We've got an RTX 4090 with 16 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM and the i9-13950HX with 24 cores, 32 threads, up to 5.5 gigahertz, and vapor chamber cooling with 32 gigs of DDR5, 5600 megahertz RAM. Very nice. And then this other sticker just shows the display. This one was on the display. 240 hertz, 18-inch QHD plus, 2560 by 1600 resolution. All right, so here is the laptop itself. Notice that the packaging is very tight on this box. You don't want this box to get slammed around, because you'll probably end up damaging the laptop. And you can already see the skin, but I do have the plastic film over the laptop right now. They do have this nice plastic uplift thing, so you can lift the laptop out of the box, which is very nice. I like that. And I'm just gonna take the laptop out for a moment and we can take a look at what's inside. We've got Razer's Go Green with Razer. They're trying to basically make the airbags are recyclable instead of, soy ink. So maybe the ink is better, more biodegradable, and more degradable than traditional petroleum ink products. And so if you care about this, and then the no chemical glue, and it's wood harvested from sustainable forestry. I don't know. It is the green marketing. It's not necessarily like I'm all for more sustainability, and that's good. This is a good thing, I think. But anyway, this is the package that comes inside the box. Let's go ahead and just open that up and see what's inside. Thank you for choosing a Razer system. The dedication we put into engineering this high-performance laptop extends into aftercare. We have committed customer support with them at your disposal. If you have any questions or problems with your original laptop, do not return the laptop to your retailer. The fastest way to resolve any issues is to go to support.razer.com. And they do have a phone number here. What? That's awesome. Okay, so I like that they have this here. I wish it was on their website, more accessible. Maybe it is now, but it wasn't when I was trying to deal with issues. Congratulations, there's no turning back. Everyone knows that it's not just a brute force that wins the battle. It also requires strength and agility. For gamers, by gamers, and then a Razer logo, a couple Razer logos. A microfiber cloth, which you'll need if you don't put a skin on there to clean the fingerprints off. You're gonna need that. Okay, so it just goes over, so this one goes over all of the different ports on the laptop. Very nice explanation of the ports. When you're setting up the laptop, you want to be able to, you need to plug the power adapter in before you power the laptop on, or the laptop won't power on. So make sure you plug the laptop in. The front indicator LED, when it's white, it means the laptop's asleep. When it's green, it means the laptop is on. When it's red, there's less than 10% of the battery life. And when it's, I think, flashing red, that means less than 3% of the battery life left. Very nice. That's some nice packaging. You're gonna want to save that number probably if you run into any issues with this laptop. So now, and I did run into a couple issues with the laptop already. We're gonna go over those today. There's a screen flickering issue as well as a speaker kind of popping issue, and both of those things I think will be fixable through driver updates and software updates. And I don't think it's worth returning the laptop for just those things. Okay, you can see the skin in all of its glory. And the skin wraps entirely around the laptop. It does not just cover the top lid. And I also want to mention that if you do decide to buy this laptop, there's a link to my laptop list that has links to where you can buy this laptop. There's lots of different online stores that have it, and if you do use the links on that list, it will help support me as a content creator. So thank you very much if you guys do use those links. And let me just show you that sheet really quick. So here's the sheet, and if you're on the live version, let me switch over to there. You can find the Blade 18 just by searching model and type in Blade 18, press enter. And here it shows you all the different configurations of the Blade 18. And if you click on this configuration, it's the one I got. You can see that you can buy this from Razer, Newegg, Best Buy, BH Photo, and Adorama. And so if this laptop gets sold out at, say, Razer, you could look at other retailers and find all the potential places to buy this laptop. And that's true for almost all of the RTX 4000 series laptops. Like 99.9% of them are on this list with links to buy them, at least in the United States. And we're working on adding the links to buy them for international affiliate retailers as well. So jumping back over, here is the skin. It does look quite delicious. I want to point out that I did mess up my skin application just a little bit. I caught a little piece of dust under the skin right here. You really want to make sure that you clean the laptop perfectly and you don't have a windy environment where any dust or any particles can get in there. So starting at the top, this thing has almost no flex. This is a good amount of pressure I'm pushing down. In the middle of the display, there's a bit of flex because you can't support the display in the middle of the display. That's going to be on every single laptop out there. Now this logo, this Razer logo, does light up when the laptop is on. This does have a little cloth there in the keyboard when it comes from the factory, so I put that back there. You can see the skin on this thing actually extends across the whole laptop, so including the touchpad. So there's cutouts for the touchpad. It goes across all of this little intricate details over here. And I also, another way in which I messed up the skin is I forgot to remove the stickers underneath the skin before I pressed it down. So you remove these stickers in the bottom right before you push it down. I want to point out the display, the keyboard's brightness is the brightest RGB backlighting I've seen on any laptop so far this year. It's brighter than everything else. It's very close to what the Alienware M16 has on it, but it's certainly noticeably brighter than the Strix and the Scar. Those backlight brightness on those keyboards are not as vibrant, which is going to make these backlight keys noticeable in bright environments, like in rooms lit with daylight, where you might not be able to see the backlight hardly at all with some of the laptops. Before we take the bottom off, I want to show you guys this laptop stacked up on top of a bunch of other laptops so you can see the size difference, okay? This is going to be very important for context because this Blade 18 is smaller than some of the other 18-inch laptops out there, all right? Okay, so first up, we have the Strix G18, and here is the back corners lined up. That's perfectly lined up. All right, so you can see the Strix G18 is a bit longer. It's a bit deeper to it. And if we were to hold these up side by side, you can also see the Strix G18 is noticeably thicker. At the front, it's about the same thickness, but at the back, especially when you factor in the rubber feet, it's noticeably thicker. It's actually a pretty substantial difference in size overall, I would say, but it's not the kind of thing that would completely change what laptop you buy. It is a noticeable thing. It's going to be easier to carry, or it's going to be easier to fit in your bags, basically, and easier to carry in your hands. It doesn't feel as big when you're hauling it underneath your arm. Let's go ahead and bust out the GT77. The GT77 is a bit on a different side. Okay, so the GT77, it's a bit awkwardly like rounded on the back, so I'm going to line it up on the front. It's pretty much exactly the same width almost. Maybe the GT7 is actually a little bit narrower, but so we're lined up on this side right here, and you can see how much deeper the GT77 is. It's a very big difference. And for thickness, you can also see the Blade 18 is pretty noticeably thinner. Let's go ahead and bust out the Alienware M16, which is a 16-inch chassis. And I'll actually put the M16 on top this time because it is a little, at least narrower. The M16 is actually deeper, even though it's a 16-inch. That's pretty insane that Razer's made it less deep, having a much bigger display. It is wider though, like it is a wider laptop. And in terms of thickness, the Blade 18 is about the same thickness, but it's very similar, right? It's not a huge difference in terms of thickness. Overall, I'm very impressed with how small the Blade 18 is versus the competition. We also have the power bricks that we can show side by side. Break out the Blade 16 too. Okay, yeah, I've got the Blade 16, hold on. So here's the Blade 16. And you can see it is a pretty substantial difference in size between the 16 and 18. So right now the back corners are lined up over here. I think that is the Blade 18 actually thinner than the 16? It's very similar in terms of thickness. But yeah, it's quite noticeable. Let me show you the screen sizes when they're next to each other, because that's also very important, obviously, too, right? It's a very noticeable difference in size. And I do have the skin for the 16-inch version here, but I haven't put it on there. So that's what the matte black looks like on here without the skin. Now let's compare power adapter sizes. So this right here, this is the GT77 power adapter. So you can see the difference in size. The Alienware M16 uses this same power adapter. All right, so the Alienware M16, M18 both use this power adapter. The GT77 uses this power adapter. This is the Razer Blade power adapter. It is literally probably half the size. It's about the same weight, but just a little bit lighter probably. The Asus adapter is about halfway in between these sizes. It's like an in-between. So compare with the Scar 18, that is the same chassis as the Strix G18 that I compared with earlier. So that's the Scar 18 comparison as well. So let's go ahead and take the bottom off of this machine. The skin is already developing a few different blemishes here, though. It's going to help protect your scratching, you know? Protect the metal from being scratched. All right, now you need a T5, a Torx T5 for this. Just using my fingernail, I've been able to get this started to come up. So you don't need to use any spudger tools, but you do need that T5 screwdriver. And I do want to mention, this is a t-shirt from Into the AM. So if you're into fashion or you want some t-shirts, they offer 10% off with the link in the description down below. They have really high quality t-shirts, and if you do use the link, it is an affiliate link, so it does help support me as a content creator. And I've been wearing their shirts, like I've been wearing this shirt for about 2 years now, and it still looks really good. I've washed it a bunch of times. Come on. You obviously want to be careful with this. There we go. Okay, so I just had to kind of pull it forward a little bit, and then it popped out. So we have our, I believe, 95 watt hour battery, 91.7 watt hours, okay? And the two cells are split down the middle with our third fan in the middle. We have our battery disconnector right here. If you need to take the RAM or the SSDs out and change them out, I recommend you unplug the battery first. You've got your two high-powered speakers here. There are also additional speakers that are upward firing. So this has a total of 6 speakers on the system, and they sound incredible. We'll do a speaker test here in a little bit. Now you've got your CMOS battery in case you do a little too much undervolting or you need to reset something. Right there is your CMOS. You got your Wi-Fi adapter right here, and it is an Intel model it's an AX211NGW. So AX211 Intel Wi-Fi adapter. So this is where our RAM is at, and we have SK Hynix RAM, and it is 16 gigs. Let me see here. 16 gigs, 1RX8 PC5 5600. So it's a 1RX8, and it's 16 gigs. So these little black flaps just kind of help with protecting the RAM from damage, and they're kind of like a shroud. Now we have two solid states. Now this is a 1 terabyte SSDs, and they are not in RAID 0. Let me zoom out a little. Now these two solid states are not in RAID 0. They are 2 separate 1 terabyte drives. It's a little disappointing that it's not in RAID 0, but also that lets you easily swap one of these out, but you won't be able to. I was hoping that it would actually be a 2 terabyte SSD with an empty drive slot, so it's easy to swap one in. The way it is now, I kind of wish they just shipped it as RAID 0. So that way, if you don't upgrade, that's just kind of my thought. Anyway, because RAID 0 would be a little bit faster out of the box. And originally, I believe they were advertising this as a 2 terabyte SSD with only 1 slot being filled instead of 2. So that's a little bit disappointing. Now, that said, it's not that big a deal. I'm going to be swapping in, if I keep this laptop, which I'm thinking right now I will, if I keep this laptop as my laptop, I'll be swapping in 2 8 terabyte SSDs into here. Not in RAID 0, but yeah, I'm going to have to reformat one of those and get that set up and going for this Razer Blade if I go that route. Okay, so breaking down what we got going on inside here, we got our third smaller fan. This helps keep the overall chassis cooler than the Blade 16. It really does help, and you want to make sure that you don't block any of the 3 fan air intakes. Now, this is your CPU overhead, and this is your GPU. Notice that this is one giant vapor chamber. And notice also that there is no sideways exhaust with the thermal design, okay? So there's no exits on the right and left side. So that means that your mouse hand's not gonna get hot, though I think it does in some ways hinder the potential thermal performance, maybe. Hard to say. But they did that so that they could then fit more ports. Notice that they have all of these ports filled up on the right and left side where the exhaust would be on most gaming laptops. And they have that also, since they moved the ports further down, they were able to put in these bigger, beefier speakers set up. So I think this is a very wise use of space overall for this laptop. Giz is the HDMI or DisplayPort. We're going to talk about the ports here in a little bit. Don't worry. I'll break them down for you so you can understand what ports do what here very soon. So overall, I really like their internal layout. They're very efficient with their space. And this vapor chamber should work really well. Now, I've heard the CPU doesn't use liquid metal. I believe the GPU does. That's what one user reported. I have not taken it off and checked, but as you'll see, the temperatures in this is actually surprisingly pretty dang good for such a thin laptop that's running this high of a power. One other thing I want to mention about this thermal design all coming out to the back here and not going out the sides is that it does a good job of directing the heat away from you as a laptop user. I was surprised in that I could actually use this laptop really well in my lap while running benchmarks, and it didn't feel that hot. I was actually shocked about it because I was like, oh my gosh, this metal laptop's gonna be so hot. At least when running Cinebench R23 in a 10-minute test, this laptop did not get that hot. I also did Timespy as well with it when I was in my lap. So the key though is you cannot block any of these fans. The fans all need to be remain visible or get good airflow into them. And then you want to put your leg, one going this way, one going this way along the edges. And these areas don't get that hot. The middle of the laptop here is where almost all the heat generation is. And it is dissipated really well overall, in my opinion. So we're going to get these screws started. We're not going to tighten anything down yet until we're making sure everything is flush. Because this back area over here, I don't think this back area is actually flush right now. So I'm actually going to take these screws back out. I think you're going to want to make sure the back area is kind of squeezed in there, like in the same way that it was kind of hard for me to get the back area off. When you're putting this laptop together, make sure this back area snaps in. Okay, so now we are flush on these back edges. So right here and right here is where you want to make sure they're flush and fully engaged. In order to do that, you slide the laptop forward just a little bit to slide it out of that slot, and now I can lift it up. And I put it down and then slide it forward just a little bit. And that keeps everything all nice and tight and flush. All right, so let's get these screws all back in. But I do like T5 screws because you know that you're pretty much never going to strip the screw because the T5 screwdriver basically never skips a beat. It's always going in there like perfectly. This screw is a little bit difficult to screw in, but I got it all in there. All right, and we should be all flush and good to go now. This laptop is very easy to take apart as long as you have a T5 screwdriver. And I am using this iFixit kit. It costs, I think, $80. It's a nice kit though. You've got a rotating screwdriver head that's magnetic, so it's easy to grab screws if they fall into the laptop chassis, and you've got every type of head you'll need for the rest of your life pretty much. You've got spuger tools, which help you take laptop chassis apart when they're difficult to get apart. I do recommend getting some kind of laptop kit. You don't need to get this one. This one's a more expensive one, but I recommend getting something. So let's show you the Razer Synapse software. So this is the home screen. Now you have tabs along the top, allowing you to access different areas of the software. You also have your dashboard. If you click on the Blade 18, it'll take you into the system. And I really like this function key primary. So if you have function keys activated, then when you press these keys right here, the F1, F2, F3, you're gonna press F1, F2, F3, F4 whenever you press these. But if you switch the function key to multimedia keys, then all of these keys become activated for changing like the screen brightness or changing for the volume. It's really nice. I love having quick access to pause, play, fast forward, jump, jump backwards, volume up and down, brightness up and down, keyboard backlight up and down. All of those functionalities are really clutch for me. I really like it. It's a playbook right out of Apple, pretty much. If I pop over to Windows Trackpad Properties, we can go to Windows Precision Settings. And right here, you can set sensitivity to be most sensitive, high sensitivity, medium sensitivity, low sensitivity. And this has to do with how easily the touchpad, I believe, has palm rejection. Basically, this is your palm rejection setting. And so I set to low sensitivity because I did get some accidental touches. After spending more time with it in games, I just realized if I want to make sure I don't accidentally fire a gun or click something wrong because I'm in panic mode in a game or whatever, you lose focus, whatever. I don't want that interrupting me. Or when I'm typing and I'm using an external mouse, I don't want to accidentally click around on a Word document. So what you can do is press the FN plus trackpad button, and you can see it disables the Razer trackpad with a quick hotkey. And so I do like this a lot. And I found it to be very helpful inside of games to prevent the giant touchpad from accidentally touching or activating. Now, this enormous touchpad is excellent, but with this skin on it, so this touchpad goes all the way around here. With this skin on it, I don't like the feel of the touchpad as much because it's not as smooth. It's more like a plasticky surface now with the vinyl on it. And so I actually am going to take, once I get done filming all the B-roll, I'm going to take this skin off of here because I don't really like having that on there. It makes it too sticky. It doesn't, my finger doesn't glide across the surface as much anymore. I do like the click of this touchpad. It does feel premium. I wish it was a little bit more tactile, like a little bit more of a shink like feel to it. It's a little bit mushy of a click to me, but it's still really good. It feels really good, and it's a huge touchpad, and the touchpad itself feels really smooth and really good. Love the touchpad on this machine overall. But if I had any criticisms of it, is I wish it had a better shunk click. The trackpad is too huge. Well, that's where you can turn it off and on easily, and adjust your palm rejection and all of that. But it allows you to do 3 or 4 finger gestures a bit easier. I do kind of agree in the sense that you don't really need a touchpad that's this big. It could be about 2 inches smaller and still be big enough. Having a super large touchpad is kind of cool. Gaming mode allows you to disable the Windows key, disable Alt tabbing or Alt F4. I just leave that off because I want to be able to press the Windows key. Inside of CPU overclocking. So this is the performance section of Synapse now, and this is the updated section. Right here we have balanced mode. You can set the fans to whatever you want them to be. Now this severely downclocks your CPU and GPU to like a middle low level of performance. But if you have the fans on high with manual mode, basically it helps cool the system down, which I do like that a lot. It helps keep the overall chassis cooler. So if you got headphones on and you're playing an esports game, you can keep the keyboard and overall chassis fairly cool, or maybe just a little bit warm. Better than the other modes, I think, in terms of temperature. Now, I have the fans on manual, on maximum right now, and the fans are like as loud as your typical gaming laptop on medium fan, I would say. So right now, probably 51, 52 decibels, somewhere in that range. At least like a foot in front of the laptop is how I measure it. If you have it on auto, usually you don't hear the fan spin up at all. Silent mode will keep the laptop quiet even when you're rendering and doing other things, but it's gonna significantly decrease your performance to be able to keep temperatures in check. Now in custom mode, you can set your priority for the CPU from low, medium, high, and your GPU on low, medium, and high. And if you put this to boost and then enable CPU overclocking, it actually gives you a warning. You have to, in order to do this, in order to undervolt and control your power limits, you need to disable core isolation. So this is, you got to search on your Windows, click the Windows search button, and then type in core. You'll click core isolation. You'll have to disable that. That does reduce your overall Windows security by a little bit. Then the other thing you have to disable is so I typed in wind and it came up with turn Windows features on and off. But basically this is what you want to get to, turn Windows features on and off, and you'll need to disable your virtual machine platform right here. You'll need to disable that. Otherwise Intel XTU can't run. So you disable those two things, you restart your machine, and then you have your undervolting controls unlocked for the Blade 18. So right here, it warns you, altering clock frequency or voltage may reduce system stability or the life of the system, so be cautious. If you do this correctly, I think it should increase the life of your system. So we're gonna go ahead and enable this, and notice our settings that Synapse gives us. We've got a voltage offset. We can set this up and down, up to -500 and +500. Don't go to the maximums. You will reach instability very quickly. But ultimately, these aren't enough controls, I think, to properly undervolt your system. You need to be able to undervolt the cache and your E-cores as well. So this is not going to suffice it. If you want to do proper undervolting, you're going to need Intel XTU. So you're going to need to download that. I already installed it, but if you want to download that directly from Intel's website. All right, so inside of Intel XTU, we're going to do this here in a moment, but I'm just going to show you the basics of what I change. The core voltage setting right here, core voltage setting. It's actually not that one. It's the core voltage offset right here. Core voltage offset. You'll want to set that. Most i9 CPUs right now I'm seeing can do at least a minus 100 millivolt undervolt. I've yet to see any that can't, but there may be some out there. So be cautious. And obviously if you do any undervolting or overclocking, it's completely at your own risk. That said, making these changes, I have found them to be safe for my laptops. I have not run into any permanent damage, any hardware damage, and I have undervolted 50 laptops probably. So there's three things that you want to make sure if you undervolt, you want to undervolt these three things. One is your core voltage offset. So I've been able to undervolt this up to minus 125 pretty consistently. I would set that to minus 125. Then I would go down to our efficiency cores voltage offset. And I was able to do this to like minus 100. I haven't pushed these to the max yet, but I was able to do minus 100, no problem. And the core voltage cache, core processor cache voltage offset. This one makes a big difference and is a bit more sensitive than the cores themselves, actually. So this one, I was experiencing crashes at 100, but I was successfully getting this up to 90 without crashes yet. But they may still be unstable. I haven't done enough testing yet, especially you need to do real workloads, real gaming workloads, as well as real, if you render videos for a living, render videos, because an actual AV workload can be more severe than Cinebench for testing stability. All right, so I went ahead and applied that undervolt. So now we have a minus 125 on the core voltage, minus 90 on the cache voltage, and minus 100 on the efficiency cores voltage. If you do play with these settings for the GPU low, medium, and high, GPU and CPU low, medium, high, I noticed that inside of Hogwarts, it would basically power limit at different levels. I think low on the GPU was like 110, medium was like 135, and then high was pushing it as high as it could go, like 165 to 175. And then the CPU low was 35 watts, the medium was like around 50, and then the high-end boost was like 50 to like 75 watts in that range. Now, I want to point out that the power limits currently are not applying. I can't get the power limit to go above 130 for the short and 120 for the long. Yeah, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to get that fixed in a driver update or something like that in the near future. We'll go over that when we start doing Cinebench R23 tests. For the display, you can set the refresh rate at 30, 48, 60, 120, and 240 hertz. And you can also have it automatically switch to 60 hertz when you're on battery mode. Now, I had problems with the display not going back to 240 hertz when plugging the laptop back in. So I ended up turning the switch back off. So I'm hoping, again, a software update is going to fix that. I don't think it's that big of a deal. You're going to get more battery life, probably like a half hour to an hour longer switching to 60 hertz. So if you're trying to maximize your battery life, definitely want to do that. Now, definitely want to use 60 hertz if you're trying to maximize that battery life. If you're just doing a quick one, you don't have to worry about that. For battery health, you can reduce the charge of the batteries to all the way down to 50% or up to 80%. So 80% is the long-term longevity. If you wanted the laptop to last as long as possible and you're using the battery pretty often, I would set it to 80 or 100. But you just don't want to leave it at 100 all the time, 24/7, because it does damage lithium-ion batteries, keeping them at 100%. If you change this down to 50, that's going to be your best long-term viability. If you not going to use the battery for a long time, switch down to 50. If you know you're going to start using the battery that day or later this week, you can disable it and go all the way to 100 for those days that you're going to use the full battery. Occasionally charging all the way to 100% doesn't damage the lithium-ion batteries much, but leaving them at 100% all the time does damage the battery. So that's why I recommend utilizing this feature to increase the longevity of your battery. For lighting modes, you can set the brightness of the system lighting. You can set the logo on the back to be static, breathing, or off. And you can change the lighting so that when it's on battery mode, it can reduce how bright it is. And then there's also a number of different effects you can use here. For the system brightness, or the system lighting, let's go ahead and go over all the different keyboard. All right, so we're gonna go over all the different types. So ambient awareness, this utilizes whatever's on your screen to change the color. Audio meter should use something like whatever music is being played. I'm not doing that right now, but yeah. So breathing lets you change between 1 to 2 colors. You can also have it go to a random color every time it comes back. So that's what I have right now. And then you have fire. This is a pretty sweet, like yellow and red looking backlight. Reactive. This is, I believe, yeah. So this is whenever you touch a key, it switches, and I just changed it to fire. But basically, it'll light up. With reactive, it'll light up when you type a key. Ripple allows you to. Okay, so ripples out from whenever you type, which looks pretty cool, and you can change the color as well. That is so cool. Anyway, all right. So spectrum cycling. This allows the color to all be one color, but it constantly is shifting. Starlight is the different colors jumping around. And you can have it be a mixture of 2 different colors if you want. And then static allows you to just make the keyboard like green or red or whatever color you want it to be. Wave is a constant wave cycle. And this is a little faster than I want. And then wheel allows it to circle from the central point of the keyboard all the way around in a circle. If we go to advanced effects, this is what I'm doing. I went into advanced effects and slowed wave down. So I have a little bit slower wave, basically. So I have in here a wave, and then you can change the properties in here. Default wave in here is slower. I don't think all of this has been grayed out for me. I'm not sure why yet. I haven't spent enough time messing with these settings, but basically the default wave inside of the Chroma Studio goes slower. So that's the one I'm using. And I think it looks the coolest. So that's the Chroma Studio. You can customize each individual key however you want. Beautiful, beautiful. So that's basically the new Synapse, and it's really impressive. I still think there are some improvements they can make on Synapse here. One of them would be going into the performance tab here. We want core voltage offset, we want cache offset, and we want the E-cores offset. We want all 3 of those in here at the minimum. And then we need to have this working properly because right now the power limits are not working properly. And then I also want to be able to have a button that says max fans. Basically, I want to be able to always run max fans, not just in balanced mode, but also in custom mode, especially if I'm overclocking and I want to go for the most performance. Having the ability to turn on max fans in any mode is really useful. Plus, even if I'm just using a Word document in general with the laptop on my lap, I want to be able to turn on max fans to keep that chassis cool on my lap. When you're on battery mode, you cannot activate max fans, and that sucks. I really want to be able to do a max fan boost at any time in whatever mode I'm in, and not just in balanced mode when I'm plugged in. That would be my feedback currently with the Synapse system. Overall, I love the direction they're going with Synapse. It's been a big improvement compared to previous versions. Here we go. So we're about a foot in front of the laptop now. Let's go ahead and play 3 or 4 different songs. Okay, so if you couldn't tell from that speaker test, the speakers on this are phenomenal. It's the best gaming laptop speakers I think I've ever heard. They're very loud. They have punchy bass. They have clear mids and highs. It's not perfectly clear. It's not quite as good as a MacBook Pro speakers, but it's so close. It is the closest I've seen or heard on a gaming laptop so far. And if you want really good speakers, this is phenomenal. And I also want to point out the spatial audio is also next level. This, like when you're playing a first-person shooter like Apex Legends, you can clearly hear left and right audio separation. They've got some kind of spatial audio software that does a good job. So basically the way it works is the speakers, when you've got someone in front of you in Apex Legends, the speaker's sound will come through both of these up-firing speakers, but then let's say a grenade goes off to your left, then you'll only get that grenade sound coming out your like bottom left speaker. So it literally hears like the grenade is to the left of your body when the grenade goes off. Audio separation is fantastic and the spatial audio is very real. And I think it's even better than the Blade 16, though the Blade 16 also had audio separation and spatial sound. The one thing is I've ran into with the speakers is that because of this spatial setup they've got going on, it's kind of a surround sound type of a feel. When I was watching shows last night, I was watching Gravity Falls in bed with this. It would be awkward because when there was supposed to be left side sound or something, the sound would suddenly come from the left side under speaker, which maybe was blocked by my chest or something, because the laptop was on my chest. The sound would be muffled all of a sudden. So I want to be able to turn spatial audio off and on as I need it, just because it sounded really awkward when I was watching a TV show in bed. Because that basically the under-firing speakers became muffled. So overall, the display has very quick response rate. I went in, I played a couple matches of Apex Legends, and the first match I played, I got 5 kills and my team won. So I was like, sweet, this display is awesome. You know, you can tell that it's a very fast response rate with minimal input lag. And I was averaging, I think, 287 frames per second in that Apex Legends match. We're gonna go to brightness and contrast and our color gamut. We should be at maximum brightness, I believe. It is, it is a very bright and very vibrant display, for sure. The one thing I immediately noticed when I switched between the MSI GT77 and this Blade 18 is that the GT77 was A, a little bit brighter, and B, had higher contrast levels. Those were immediately noticeable to me when I switched between the laptops. But that said, this display is still really fantastic. Oh, we did not have the brightness at max there, so we got to restart this. So we have brightness at 100% now. So we're setting the brightness to 0. We'll see what our brightness is and our contrast is when you turn the brightness all the way down on this display. It is very bright, even on the lowest settings when I was watching TV on it last night in bed. So now, as always, for the color gamut test, I say that the one thing I always mention when I'm looking at these display results, that you can't trust these display results to be as accurate because it always underrepresents the Adobe and P3 color gamut by a little bit. I need to get a display checker tool. I actually have another one. I tried using it. I need to do more testing and learn more about it to be able to fully use it for testing. So I haven't switched over to it yet, but I do have another one right over there. So just know that this has rated 100% sRGB, 91% Adobe RGB, 90% of the P3 color gamut. And realistically, it's probably with a really high contrast level of 27,000. Now at the highest brightness setting, we got 557 nits brightness with 840:1 contrast ratio. So the contrast ratio is not super high, but that's still pretty good. And I also did notice that my display does have some backlight bleed. This screen does have some backlight bleed. It's not atrocious, but it's not great. It's kind of an in-between unit, I think. So there you can see the backlight bleed. There is some in the corners here. It's not super noticeable. It is something that I do notice. So there, that should show you the backlight bleed. We got a little bit in the top corner, just a little bit in almost every corner, but it's not that severe. We've got a monitor on behind me too, so it's not super obvious. But yeah, so there you go. So we got some over here. We got a little bit along the top and a little bit in the corners here, but it's not noticeable at all. in typical usage, unless it's maybe a dark movie environment. Let's go over the keyboard and trackpad in a little bit more detail. So this trackpad, I believe, is 7.5 inches wide. It's a really big trackpad. If you want to right click, you tap the right, anywhere on the right side, like basically anywhere over here is a right click. Left click can be anywhere. You can also tap for a single tap, or you can double tap to do a right click. I found myself tapping actually without actually physically pressing as much. This actually works really well for controlling the mouse here. And with the vinyl, I didn't like it as much. I actually preferred the touchpad with no vinyl on it. It glides more easily with the glass, because now it feels like more like plastic. The actual keyboard keys themselves, they have a decent amount of travel. These have a decent amount of travel. They have good feel. These whole top section becomes function keys. And then these arrow keys, if you wanted to use home and page up, page down, what you do is you press the FN key plus the arrow key to get your home and page up, page downs. So page up is the up arrow, down arrow, and then home. Yeah, so it works fine. In a pinch, once you get used to it. I just wish the arrow keys were also full-size arrow keys. That's probably, like, I feel like a Razer should definitely do that in the future. Put some full-size arrow keys there instead of these little mini ones, which you end up accidentally touching pretty often. Like I said earlier in the live stream, the keyboard brightness is phenomenal. The keyboard itself, backlight on the keyboard, looks just gorgeous. So this environment I'm in right now is a fairly decent studio lit environment. It's not super bright right now, but let's go ahead and do a test. The detail is not amazing, but I feel like it's pretty good, especially for a webcam. If you're going to use a small window, I mean, look at the detail on the GH5. It's very clear. The hair detail and fine detail around the hair could be improved. I still think webcams can get better, but this is a nice step in the right direction and much more usable than the average webcam on a gaming laptop. So kudos to Razer there. I'd say still shoot to make it better. I would give it an 8 out of 10. The details and colors and brightness could still be better. Still a very good webcam, an excellent webcam compared to all the competition. But it's way better than any other gaming laptop. It's much closer to what you're going to get with like a face cam on like a MacBook. And maybe not quite that good, but it's pretty close. I would say MacBooks still have slightly better quality, but it's pretty close. Now, I'd have to actually see it side by side to know for sure one way or the other. On the right side, no flex, no flex, no flex. There's obviously flex on the touchpad because the touchpad goes down, but along the edge here, there's no flex. It's all rigid, rigid, super rigid, rigid, rigid. A tiny bit of flex, not much, just a tiny little bit of flex. Completely rigid, 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 rigid. Going through the middle now, a bit of flex. A bit of flex. They could probably use a little more reinforcement in the middle underneath the chassis, but it's still very, very minimal flex compared to most laptops. I don't know, it's minimal flex. There's still a decent amount of flex though. It's not like it's without flex in the middle. Going through the keyboard itself, just a little bit of flex through the keyboard. Overall, excellent chassis rigidity as you'd expect from a unibody aluminum metal chassis. And we are currently in an Undervolt, okay? And I'm at a reasonable level for the Undervolt, one in which I think is stable, I believe is stable. So let's go, I'll pop back into Intel XDU to show you what the settings are again. So for the Undervolt, we're at -125 on the cores, the P cores, the main cores. And then we are at -90 millivolts on the cache, / ring, basically. And then we have efficiency cores cache at -100 millivolts. And we have the GPU overclocking enabled right now. Let's go ahead and do a single run. Here we go. And we need to open up HW info. I'll let this one, I heard Strix had bad coil whine issues. The only thing that stopped me from purchasing. It's going to vary from unit to unit, BT, KT. Like the Strix G18 I had coil whine. The Scar 18 I had did not have hardly any coil whine. So that said, Asus was going to modify the fans to be a little bit better. So there's our initial score, 31,363. Very impressive for such a thin laptop. That's a unibody chassis. And also notice, can you hear the fans? The fans, there's hardly any fan noise going on right now. And we only ran it once. The fans will ramp up, but I'm really impressed with how responsive the fans are. They pretty much immediately come on as soon as the load begins, and then they go away very quickly as well. and they don't get excessively loud. They're definitely quieter than your average laptop fans. They're not perfectly quiet. They're definitely noticeable, but still quieter. As you can see, it's pretty minimal fan noise. And this is me holding it about where your head would be. Overall, I'm just extremely impressed with the fan applications in this machine. It's definitely quieter implementation than your average ones. Initial undervolting, we could probably undervolt this sucker more. We got 31,588. Let's go with a 10 minutes throttled test and see what we get. And we'll also look at our HW information here. As you can see so far, we are averaging 4.3 or 4.2 right now. 4.2 to 4.3 gigahertz on our P cores and 3.5 gigahertz on our E cores. Going down here to our stats here, you can see that we are at 130 watts of continual usage right now. This is before it goes down to 120. So now it's dropping down to the 120 watts range. And notice our temps on the package power, like on our CPU package is 89. And our temps on the cores right now are averaging 82. Very impressive, very impressive. So our average core speed right now is 4.199. And that's better than what we were getting on the Strix G18. Like we were going, I believe, around 4.05 on the Strix G18, and that had a higher power limit of 140 watts. And this is doing 120 watts, but with an undervolt, it is pushing our clock speeds up to a higher level. So I'm expecting we're gonna get even better performance than the Strix G18 in this 10-minute test, but not by much. Just, it should be, I think this 10-minute test should give us right around 30,000, maybe a little over or a little under 30,000. All right, so looking at our stats, we're down to the last minute of our 10-minute test. We're averaging 4.1 gigahertz across all cores. Interesting, our wattage dropped down to 95. Interesting, 99. We're throttling below 120 right now. This is the first time I've seen this on the Blade 18. I'm curious what caused this, because our temperatures are good. We're at 82 and 89. For our CPU. It seems like it just got interrupted there at the end. That's gonna hurt our score. So now it's coming back up. Yeah, now we're doing 120 again. I wonder if it's because I opened up HW info and it just deprioritized Cinebench R23. I don't know. But notice that we're pushing our cores back up to 4.2 gigahertz. These are very good performance numbers for our clock speeds on the CPU. Above average, even against the Strix G18, SCAR 18, and GT77. This is right neck to neck with pretty much all of those. Obviously the GT77, when we did the full undervolt and let it go ham, it did better than this, but not by a huge margin. 30,662, and that includes like that interruption right there. I think the score would actually be probably more like 100 points higher if we didn't have that interruption with the drop in power limit there for a moment. That is incredible for a 10-minute score. Good job, Razer. I can't believe you managed to pack this much performance in something so thin and small. And I'm pretty sure that Blade 16 is going to have similar-ish performance when you undervolt it too. So I don't think the Blade 16 will quite match this, but it's going to be pretty dang close. Really, really phenomenal overall. So you can see that right now we are at +0 overclock on the core clock for the GPU and +0 on the memory, so no overclock currently. We are in dedicated GPU mode only, so we're not in advanced Optimus mode. We're only launching on the NVIDIA GPU. Let's go ahead and run this benchmark. This is the base. Then we're gonna go ahead and overclock it a little bit and see what we can get with some, I don't know, about 200 clock speed increase. All right, so here we are in Timespy. Notice that our clock speed, our CPU is only pulling 39, 40 watts. It's interesting because in the GT77 tests, we were pulling more like 50 to 60 watts in these kinds of tests. Now our GPU is pulling 178, 180, 190 right now. I don't know, the wattage there is interesting. 177. Our clock speed though is only about 2,000, 2,100, 2040, 2025. with the GT77, like the base with no overclock is doing more like 2200 as an average. So in this one, we're doing more like little over 2000 as an average, like right around 2025, 2050 or something. Our base clock, our base overclock is not as high as what MSI does on their GPUs. So it's important to just notice that right out of the gate, that the GPU is not as highly tuned from the manufacturer. Okay, so our score is 21,509. This is basically an RTX 3090 in a laptop. Freaking insane, right? Absolutely insane. The CPU score, 15,838, is also very good. It can get better if you do more optimization and tweaks, but since we did undervolt the CPU, we got a great score on that one as well. So this is our baseline score, 21,509, no overclock to the GPU, 15,838. These are excellent performance scores. It's really impressive. So now to overclock this, what we're going to do, I'm going to do a quick overclock, but basically I'm going to run the graphics test 2 here, and I'm going to run it in windowed mode. I'm going to do a looping enabled. I'm going to run this. This is going to give us a 3D workload to run. And then we're going to increase our memory clock and core clock. Now, if we were to try to undervolt this, what you would do is do Control F inside of Afterburner here. And what you want to do is make a flatline curve at whatever lower voltage that you want the GPU to run at. So right now we're doing, you can see that we've got 2000 megahertz and it's hitting these levels of millivolts. So our voltage, like it's hitting right around 875, 850 for our voltage on the GPU. And what you'd want to do is basically for undervolting it, you'd want to grab these, all of these lines, all of these nodes. This is our voltage curve. We would want to make that completely flat. So that way the GPU will only utilize the lower voltage level. And it may end up, we want to try to get kind of a stable clock speed, say around 2000. And just say, use 2000 megahertz on the clock speed at this lower voltage level. And then in theory, it should reduce temperatures and performance. I don't want to do any undervolting, but that's basically how you would do it. And there's a lot of hotkeys that goes into doing that. And I want to just make sure that I test everything first before I show that live on a live stream, because it is a lot more complex. Overclocking the GPU itself is actually pretty easy. You download a tool like MSI Afterburner here, all right? And then what you do is you just raise the core clock. So we're gonna start with a core clock of 150. And for the memory, I'm pretty confident we can do 500. I haven't tried overclocking this at all. So this might actually cause instability. I'm gonna start at 150 and 500. Notice our GPU temperatures are 73 degrees, which is not that hot. We're using 100% GPU utilization. Our memory frequency went from 9,000 to 9,501. We've got our GPU core clock now jumping up to 2,200 to 2,300. I saw 2,300 a moment ago. It's instead of dropping below 2,000 now, it's resting around just above 2,000. Our average GPU clock is certainly higher than it was, which is exactly what we're looking for in this GPU overclock scenario. So far, we're not seeing any instabilities in the Timespy window. So we're going to go ahead. I'm just going to go ahead and bump the core clock by another 50. So now we're at plus 200 on our core clock overclock. We're going to start seeing some diminishing returns as the laptop is unable to maintain certain core clocks based on the voltage going through the laptop. So we're going to end up basically having diminishing returns as we increase. And eventually, we're going to see instability in the GPU. We're going to see seeing artifacting in this. If we raise the core clock much higher, I think it's important to be moderate with what overclocks you apply and to slowly, gradually increase them. And then if it is stable in a tool like Timespy, then go into some really demanding games and make sure that they work in the real world. And if you use your NVIDIA GPU to do like video workloads like Premiere or DaVinci Resolve, also test rendering in DaVinci Resolve and Premiere. It may improve your performance in those applications as well, but it also may be unstable or cause instability. Your overclock might. So you'll want to do a full test of everything that you do on your laptop to ensure stability. We're having no stability issues with this level of overclock. I'm going to go ahead and bump the memory frequency. I'm going to just go ahead and I'm just going to go straight to 1,000 because the GT77 was able to do 1,400 stably. Oh, we can't go that high. It prevents us from going up to 1,000. Probably something in the VBIOS is like, hey, you can't overclock the memory that high. Okay, so we can go to 900. Okay, so we can go to 1,000. All right, so now we have got 200 core clock OC on the GPU and 1,000 on the memory. Let's see if we run into any artifacting or issues. Overall, I'm seeing some nice improvement. I have yet to see any kind of instability. I'm not seeing too much improvement on the core clock. It's kind of not going up much. So I don't think increasing the core clock is actually going to help us at all anymore. Once you've got a core clock and a memory clock that you're happy with for your overclock, I would recommend saving this in a slot over here. So I can hit the save button and select 1. So now this is saved as preset 1. And you can also save like a 00, like stock preset. And then you can have this boot up in Windows and boot up in like the preset 1. So that way your overclock is applied every time that you boot into Windows. All right, so we're running Timespy now with our overclock enabled on the GPU, and we're gonna see how many more points we can get. I'm hoping that we're gonna go above 22,000 on the Timespy. That's my goal. So notice our wattage is not jumping up to the 175. It's kind of warming up to that. Our clock speeds are hitting up to 2200 megahertz now, which is good. That's better. That's basically what the GT77 baseline was. The fans on this machine are not that loud yet. We are still only seeing 70-degree temps on the GPU during this overclock, 76 on the CPU. This thing is doing a really good job of keeping the CPU and GPU cooled overall. It's just not, my only complaint is really that the GPU wattage is just not locked to that 175, and it's probably hurting our potential scores and potential frame rates by like 5 to 10%, probably like 5% or something, compared to something like the GT77. So notice we're only pulling about 95 watts right there in that CPU test. It's interesting. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Our CPU score went up too. That's impressive. 22,235 for our graphics score, 16,351 for our overall CPU score, which is even higher than the GT77. That is incredible for a thin laptop talent. Yeah, that is really good for a laptop that's this thin and this brought down. Right now, my settings that I have on, I actually set my NVIDIA DLSS down to performance because I thought it looked a little smoother. We'll set it to quality to be consistent with my previous live streams. DLSS to quality, frame generation is on. We have uncapped frame rate. Everything is set to ultra with ray tracing enabled. Our CPU is getting a little toasty, but our frame rate is nice. And our 1% lows are looking pretty good so far. Oh, there's some kind of trial. I don't have it unlocked yet, so I can't do it. Okay, so we're gonna do the battle arena. This is a pretty sweet area. You can like basically try to survive as long as you can. Did I undervolt before benchmark? Yes, I did. Oh, he got me. Whoa, he just teleported and hit me in the face. What is that? Ow. This game is a lot like Elden Ring in that you have to time all of your attacks. Going into our settings here, we're at QHD+, we're on Ray Tracing Ultra, we're gonna turn frame generation on, we're gonna set DLSS to quality, and so basically Ray Tracing Ultra, DLSS to quality, and we'll see what we get. No. Just pause that. Okay, so the Scar 18 got 116.25 with a min FPS of 45. So 116.45. Let's see what this gets. It's probably going to be just a hair under or very similar, maybe a little more actually. All right, so we got 120.43. So this was just a little bit slower than the Scar 18 in the same test. Wait, oh, this is a little faster. Oh, this is 4 FPS faster than the Scar 18. We are in an overclock right now. This is not factory. The Scar 18 had a small overclock, I think 50 and 100. So this has a little bit more of an overclock, but we got 4 FPS more on the average, about the same on the min, 45 versus 43. So, all right, so I just started the average FPS counter up here. Let's see what we get when we run around. So this is an excellent overall gameplay experience for just using the speakers on the machine. If you want to have no headphones and you just want to have the speakers on the machine, it's great. Oh my gosh.
You don't know me, but you will. Name's Dino. Deal with down to finish this another time.
Just showing you how we're testing it. We're testing it with anti-aliasing on, with high textures. Everything else is set to low. So you can see our average FPS up here is 295. Obviously, very, very good FPS. All right, so here we go. This screen is super fast response rate. This game is playing exceptionally smooth. We're just basically locked at our 300 FPS cap. This game cannot go higher than 300 FPS, which does not make any sense to me. I wish it could go higher. Okay, so very nice. So this is team deathmatch mode. It's a rather hectic and crazy mode where you constantly fight and respawn. So I figured it'd be good to show you guys that over and over. And I've got the average FPS running now. I just refreshed it. This is a pretty sweet loadout with the G7 Scout and the Wingman. I'm gonna die. Intel iGPU drivers were also bad at the launch of the 11th and 12th gen. It's a recurring issue. They fix it. Yeah, that's the plan. That's my knowledge. That's my knowledge that the Intel drivers are going to be fixed, and I anticipate the speaker issue that I encountered will also be fixed. So we're averaging 275 FPS, 165 right now. All right, so we're gonna wrap up games here and do a summary. So we're gonna get one more kill if we can, and then we'll end this gameplay. Okay, so that'll count as our review. So our kill. We got 280 FPS on average, 167 for 1% lows. Overall, excellent performance here in Apex Legends. Phenomenal. Overall, I am really loving the Blade 18 so far. I am leaning towards making it my primary laptop this year. It's not going to be quite as high performance as the Scar 18 or GT77. Definitely not, especially in high levels of GPU, CPU, cross-load, dual-load type of scenarios like in Dead Space or certain areas of Hogwarts where we saw up to 270 watts of power through the Scar 18. And that said, we still am getting very good performance with the Blade 18. Good enough to where you're going to have a great gameplay at this QHD resolution. It can play esports games at QHD 240 hertz really, really well. The overall chassis doesn't get as hot. It's still warm right here. The bottom middle does get hot, but the sides, the touchpad, and the keyboard rest doesn't get as hot as, say, the Blade 16. The Blade 16 gets a bit warmer, which can be a little more uncomfortable. The speakers on this, phenomenal. Display on this, phenomenal. The keyboard backlight is really, really great. The keyboard feel is really good. Arrow keys need to be changed, I think, but the extra functionality row across the top is fantastic. The flex on this, fantastic. Very little flex. Some upgradability. You can change out the RAM. You can change out 2 SSDs. This is going to be more portable than in any other 18-inch laptop. It's really impressive what Razer has done with this machine. We're going to be doing a full live benchmarks live stream with this coming up in the near future. We're going to test like 15 to 20 games with it. We're going to be able to compare. We're going to be able to do detailed performance comparisons with the other laptops like the Scar 18 and the GT77. I'm going to do a live benchmarks live stream with the MSI GT77 soon. So if you want to be able to check out those live streams, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and come back for more content. And know that there is an option to become a member to support the channel as well. Okay. All right. See you guys in the next one. Brandon out.